Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de iBonds, or a government-issued type of investment that are meant to help you hedge against inflation. Its returns are high and risks are low. So then why don't I have any? The mystery of it all. Hey, XenPuck here. So obviously I'm already retired. That's why I can cut my own hair and not care about how bad it looks, because I can afford to not care about anyone's opinion except my wifey's. To be clear, she also thinks that my own haircutting skills are mediocre at best, and yet refuses to help me. So there, my level of mastery shall stay. Wait, that was a tangent. Okay, back on track. We're talking about iBonds today. Oh boy. First, a quick definition, right? So basically, iBonds are bonds that are issued by the United States federal government that is related to the interest rate. It is safe because it is backed by the United States federal government. I mean, the only way it can fail is if the actual government failed. And if that happened, we'd all have way bigger problems than any kind of bonds or what they're worth anyway. And its returns is creeping up because considering the rising inflation rate, which then causes the interest rate for the country to go up in an effort to combat inflation. So basically the returns are better when inflation is higher, right? Therefore, it is a reasonable hedge against inflation. Oh, and they're exempt from state and local taxes too. Jesus. Wow. It's all good things with iBonds, isn't it? So what's the catch? Well, let's list some of those as well, right? Like any bonds, there's a maturity date. For iBonds, it's 30 years, but you can't sell them after just 1 year, and after 5 years, there's no penalty on interest. And between 1 year and 5 years, though, if you do sell them, you do forfeit a few months worth of interest. In that way, it's kind of like a CD in terms of a financial instrument if you've ever had one of those. All right, point number 2. So now the definition is out of the way, I can tell you why I still don't have any. There's 2 reasons. The first one that we're going to talk about is that it's not available via any regular brokerage, so ease of use is bad, okay? You do have to go buy these directly from Uncle Sam via Treasury Direct. There's a website, you can just look it up. So that means keeping another ledger of login info for another portal, this time a government-run one, and you know how well those are designed. To be honest, I was confused just looking for how to buy this thing to begin with. Of course, that's not the only reason I say ease of use is bad, right? Because for some reason, for reasons that I can't understand, any American is only limited to buying 10K worth of iBonds per year. Okay, there is a way to game the system that lets you get away with 5K more, so a total of possibly 15K per year per person. But for now, we're going to pretend it's just 10K, because that's a nice round number, right? The problem with hedging against inflation is that, sure, we can do that with iBonds, but to the tunes of only 10K per year per person? I mean, look, I'm already fired, so $10,000 to me means very, very little, to the point that this restriction alone makes me just not want to bother with this instrument at all. After all, I can't reasonably protect any significant portion of my net worth against inflation using iBonds with such a low ceiling. Just remember, this objection is obviously very, very personal to me in my situation. Now, let's say if your net worth is maybe 100K or less, then protecting, say, even 10% of that may seem like a better idea than that same amount would equate to me, right? Because it would be a smaller percentage to me. Technically, I guess I could double that by also using my wifey's name, maybe up to 20K a year, but even then, it just seems like it's hardly worth bothering. And finally, okay, no matter what a relatively small percentage, you'd think maybe I'd still put some money in this instrument just for the sake of diversification. And generally speaking, I'd agree, right? Maybe I will spring for it someday. But my other objection, besides weird rules and easy use, has to do with its CD-like illiquidity issue for at least the first year, right? Like many people talk about iBonds, they're like, oh, it's like a cash equivalent, so maybe we can park their emergency fund in there. But the fact that you can't access it, whatever you buy in year 1, is actually a problem, right? Because that means during year 1, you have no emergency fund at all. That's the thing about emergencies, right? You don't know when it'll happen. What's the point of having 10 to 20K that you know is earning a good return in a safe investment if you can't actually take it out to use on a car repair or a broken AC or a certain like job loss related expense, right? To me, there is no point, none at all, right? It just means that most people will have to come up with yet another type of liquid cash type of accounts that definitely won't pay nearly as much return as an iBond for emergency purposes, right? Oh well, so long as you don't think of iBonds as an emergency fund, or you've already started, say, like laddering iBond purchases for 5 consecutive years, then I guess that'll mitigate this concern of mine, right? But that's 5 years of work and basically 50 to 100K in cash. By then you'll be able to use at least 40 to 80K as an emergency fund, so that would work, right? It just takes a long time. I mean, good lord, 5 years to set this up. I guess I could have done that with a CD ladder too, right? Honestly, I'm not against the idea. I'm just voicing my concern about how unreliable this is as an emergency fund at the very beginning, right? So, in conclusion, I'm not against iBonds, right? I actually really like them, to be frank. I wish the government would let us, kind of route these purchases through my regular discount brokerage like Schwab, like I use for stocks and corporate bonds, but alas, I doubt that's ever going to happen. I also wish there wasn't a limit or a limit that's much higher for moments when people who are not poor wants to hedge against the markets. But maybe that's actually why the 10K caps is there to begin with, right? So the masses won't exit the cash too easily. Anyway. I do hope to actually create an iBond ladder at some point, right? Just remember, it won't work for an emergency fund in the very short term if you consider a year to be short term, right? But we are, obviously, if you're watching this video, we are people who are interested in FIRE. Our time horizon should be in the multiple decades, right? And if you agree, then maybe we should all get ourselves some iBonds, right? Even if I haven't been smart enough to get that train going quite yet. And that's okay. Life is all about learning, right? And I am learning as well. Cheers. I'll approach it.